It was a cold evening in New York City, the kind of chill that seeped through layers of clothing and straight into your bones. The streets were alive with the usual chaos: honking cars, bright flashing billboards, and hurried pedestrians moving through the endless sea of lights. In the distance, Central Park stood still and dark, a sharp contrast to the fast-paced world around it. Inside a luxurious penthouse overlooking the park, James Crawford sat in his leather armchair, swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand. He was a man who had everything: money, power, and influence. His real estate empire had made him one of the wealthiest men in the city. Yet if you look closely into his cold, calculating eyes, you would see something else. Despite all his success, there was an emptiness inside him that nothing, no amount of money or power, could fill. His wife, Emily, stood near the fireplace, nervously twisting the hem of her dress. She had been trying to summon the courage for days, but every time she looked into his detached eyes, doubt crept in. She had tried before to connect with him, to talk, but he was always too absorbed in his own world. Tonight, however, she couldn't wait any longer. "James, I have something to tell you," Emily said, her voice trembling as she stepped forward. James barely looked up from his glass, his expression indifferent. "Go ahead," he replied flatly. "I'm pregnant," Emily whispered. For a moment, silence hung in the air. James placed his glass on the table, his fingers lingering on the edge of the crystal as his gaze slowly turned toward her. His expression remained unreadable, his eyes cold and calculating as they studied her face, searching for any sign of deceit. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, the weight of his silence pressing down on her. She had expected shock, perhaps even joy, but the response she received was far from what she had imagined. James didn't smile, didn't soften in the slightest. Instead, a small smirk tugged at the corners of his lips. "Pregnant?" he repeated, his tone mocking. "And I suppose you expect me to believe this child is mine?" Emily's stomach dropped. Her hands began to tremble, the warmth she had hoped for quickly evaporating. "James, what are you saying? Of course it's yours. We've been married for 3 years. Why would I lie about this?" James stood up abruptly, his imposing figure towering over her. His voice grew colder, filled with an edge that sent chills through her. "Don't play innocent, Emily," he spat. "My mother warned me about you from the start. She said you were just after my money, and now you're proving her right." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "Your mother, James, your mother has never liked me. She always wanted you to marry someone from your own social circle, someone who fit her idea of acceptable. But I loved you for who you were, not for your money." James laughed bitterly, a sound that cut through the tension in the room. "Love?" He shook his head in disbelief. "Don't make me laugh. You think this baby will somehow secure your place in my life? You think that a child will give you some permanent claim to my wealth?" Emily shook her head, a sense of disbelief washing over her. "I don't want your money, James," she said, her voice breaking. "I just wanted to share this joy with you. I thought you would be happy." James took a step closer, his face inches from hers, his breath hot against her skin. "I don't trust you, Emily, and I won't let you trap me with a child." Her hands instinctively went to her stomach, as if to protect the life growing inside her. "James, please," she pleaded. "Don't do this. This is our child." But James had already made up his mind. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook, scribbling a number down with sharp, deliberate strokes. "Here," he said, thrusting the check at her. "Take this and leave. You'll never have to worry about money again." Emily stared at the check in horror, her chest tightening. "You think I can be bought?" she whispered. "You think I would trade my child for a piece of paper?" James's face hardened, his jaw tightening. "If you don't want the money, then leave with nothing. But you're not staying here. Pack your things and get out." His voice was final, his tone laced with an authority that left no room for argument. Emily's hands trembled as she packed the few belongings she had left behind in the penthouse. The harsh words James had thrown at her echoed in her mind, each one more painful than the last. Her chest felt tight, the weight of his rejection suffocating her. She had imagined this moment countless times, but nothing could have prepared her for the cold, heartless reality of it. As she zipped up her bag, she glanced around the luxurious apartment that had once been her dream. The panoramic view of Central Park, the expensive furniture, the endless space, everything that had once felt like a symbol of her future now felt like a prison. She had spent 3 years here, building a life with James, believing that love would eventually grow. But now all she saw was the emptiness. Her heart ached, not just for the life she was leaving behind, but for the baby growing inside her. She had hoped for so long that James would share in the joy of becoming a parent. Instead, she was walking away with nothing but a check and a broken heart. The door to the penthouse was wide open, and as she made her way toward it, she felt the weight of every step. Her mind raced. Where would she go? How would she survive in this vast, indifferent city? Just as she reached the threshold, she stopped. One last time, she turned her gaze back to James, still sitting in his leather armchair, his back to her. He hadn't even bothered to look at her. The indifference in his posture cut deeper than any harsh words he could have said. With a shaky breath, she stepped into the cold night. The door clicked shut behind her with finality. The cold air hit Emily's face like a slap, sharp and unrelenting. She wrapped her arms tightly around herself as if trying to shield her from the world that had suddenly turned so cruel. The streets of Manhattan, usually so full of energy and life, now felt like a vast, empty space. She felt as though she had been abandoned in the middle of an unfamiliar world, with no map and no way forward. She walked aimlessly, her thoughts swirling, but nothing seemed to make sense anymore. She had once believed in the life she had built with James. She had believed in their future together, in the love that was supposed to grow between them. But now with each step, those illusions crumbled further. She clutched her stomach, whispering to herself, "I'll take care of you, my baby. No matter what, I won't let you suffer." After what seemed like hours, Emily found herself in Grand Central Terminal. It was a place she had passed through many times before, always filled with people rushing to their destinations. But tonight, it felt different. The station was just as crowded as usual, yet Emily felt like she was invisible. No one noticed her pain. No one cared. She sat down on a bench in a quiet corner, burying her face in her hands. The tears she had been holding back finally began to fall, but she didn't cry out loud. She just sat there, numb, feeling as though she had lost everything. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. Her family was miles away in Chicago, and she couldn't even afford a plane ticket. She had no friends in the city, no safety net to fall back on. The thought of asking for help from a stranger made her feel small and insignificant. But what other choice did she have? The bus ride to Chicago was long, uncomfortable, and filled with a strange mix of emotions. Emily sat by the window, staring out at the dark night as the lights of New York slowly faded into the distance. She had never felt so alone, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that leaving was the only choice she had left. The city that had once promised so much now felt like a cold, empty place. Her stomach churned with hunger, but she couldn't bring herself to eat. The pain inside her was far too much to bear, and the thought of food seemed so trivial compared to the whirlwind of emotions swirling in her mind. Rachel. Emily clung to the thought of her old friend as if she were a lifeline. It had been years since they last spoke, but Rachel had always been there when Emily needed her. A part of her couldn't believe she was asking for help, but another part, the part that was desperate and broken, knew she had no other option. As the hours passed, Emily's mind wandered back to her time with James. She remembered the early days of their marriage when everything felt perfect, when she thought love would eventually heal all the cracks in their relationship. But now it was clear that love wasn't enough. James had never truly loved her the way she had loved him. The weight of the past, of everything she had left behind, pressed down on her chest. Yet despite the heartbreak, there was a glimmer of hope, small but undeniable. A fresh start in Chicago. With Rachel's help, she could rebuild her life, one step at a time. The bus finally pulled into Chicago early the next morning, and Emily felt a mix of relief and exhaustion wash over her. The city looked different from what she remembered. Less polished, more gritty, but somehow warmer. Maybe it was just the fact that she wasn't alone anymore, or maybe it was the hope she clung to that things could get better. She had made it. The hard part was over, or so she thought. As she stepped off the bus, she took a deep breath, the crisp Chicago air filling her lungs. She hadn't seen Rachel in years, but she hoped that their bond would be enough to bridge the gap that time had created. Rachel had always been kind-hearted, and Emily couldn't help but think that her friend would take her in without hesitation. The cab ride to Rachel's apartment was quick, though Emily's mind raced the whole time. What if Rachel had moved on? What if things were different now? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but she tried to push it aside. She had no other options left. When the cab finally stopped in front of the modest building where Rachel lived, Emily hesitated for a moment. She had no idea what she was about to walk into, but she had nowhere else to go. With a deep breath, she grabbed her small bag and walked up to the door. She knocked twice. The seconds felt like hours. Then the door opened, and there stood Rachel, her eyes wide with shock. "Emily?" she gasped, disbelief coloring her voice. Emily stepped inside Rachel's apartment, her heart pounding. It felt like a lifetime had passed since she last saw her friend, but the warmth of Rachel's embrace washed over her immediately. Emily allowed herself to sink into the hug, her shoulders shaking as she held back tears. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt safe, like she wasn't completely alone. "Come in," Rachel said, pulling her inside. "You look exhausted. Sit down, let me get you something to drink." Emily nodded, too drained to say anything. She collapsed onto the couch as Rachel went into the kitchen. The apartment was small but cozy. The faint smell of coffee and books filled the air, and the soft hum of the city outside made Emily feel oddly grounded. Rachel returned with a cup of tea and sat down beside her. "I can't believe you're here. What happened? What are you doing in New York?" Emily looked at her hand, still trying to process the whirlwind of the last 24 hours. "James. He threw me out," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm pregnant, Rachel. And he doesn't care. He never did." Rachel's face darkened with anger, her eyes widening. "That bastard," she muttered, clenching her fists. "How could he do that to you?" Emily wiped away a tear that had fallen. "I don't know. I thought we were building a life together. I thought he loved me, but he just saw me as an asset, someone he could discard when I wasn't useful anymore." Rachel's anger was palpable, but she softened when she saw the pain in Emily's eyes. "You're safe here, Em. For as long as you need. You'll figure this out. I'm here for you." Emily nodded, her throat tight. It was hard to believe that Rachel, someone she hadn't seen in so long, was now the one offering her shelter, warmth, and a sense of belonging. It was hard to believe that after all the years, all the distance between them, Rachel would be there to pick up the pieces. But right now she had no choice but to trust her. "I don't know what to do, Rachel," Emily admitted, her voice small. "I've never been this lost before. I thought I had everything. But now, I don't even know how to take care of myself, let alone this baby." Rachel reached over and took her hand, her voice soft but firm. "We'll take it one step at a time. First you rest. You've been through hell. I'm here, and we'll figure out the rest together." The warmth in Rachel's voice was like a lifeline, pulling Emily out of the numbness she had been drowning in. Maybe, just maybe, things could start to feel different here. The next few days were a blur as Emily tried to settle into a new routine. She helped Rachel with small tasks around the apartment, but the weight of her situation still loomed over her. The pregnancy, her uncertain future, and the overwhelming fear of not being able to provide for her baby all gnawed at her. Yet as Rachel's presence anchored her, a part of Emily started to believe she might find a way forward. The days turned into weeks, and Emily began to settle into a routine in Chicago. Rachel had been a constant support, helping her navigate everything from finding food to setting up a small corner for Emily in the apartment. The life she had once dreamed of in New York felt like a distant memory, but in the quiet of Rachel's home, Emily started to feel a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in months. She had started looking for work. There was a small diner just down the street, and despite the fact that it wasn't glamorous, Emily knew it was a start. She couldn't afford to be picky. It was important to her to do something, anything, to take the first step toward independence. Her first day at the diner was overwhelming. The clattering of dishes, the smell of grease, and the fast pace of the place felt like a world away from the luxurious life she had left behind. She was given a simple apron and asked to take orders. It wasn't glamorous by any stretch of the imagination, but it was work, and it was hers. By the end of the first shift, her feet ached, her hands were stained from scrubbing dishes, and she was exhausted in a way she had never been before. But there was a sense of pride in her chest. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was doing something for herself. She wasn't relying on anyone else. She was building something. Rachel was supportive, always offering encouragement when Emily came home each night. But Emily knew that Rachel couldn't provide the answer she needed. Only she could do that. She had to keep pushing forward, even when the fear threatened to overwhelm her. As the days turned into weeks, Emily began to find a rhythm. Her shifts at the diner were long and tiring, but they were giving her the stability she so desperately needed. The tips weren't much, but they were enough to keep her going, enough to keep her from feeling like a total failure. The physical exhaustion from her job was unlike anything she had ever experienced. By the time she got home each night, her body ached, and her mind felt like it was on autopilot. But as she sat down to dinner with Rachel, she realized that she was stronger than she had given herself credit for. She was surviving. She was going to make it. One evening, after a particularly tough shift, Emily collapsed onto the couch, rubbing her sore feet. Rachel sat down beside her, a steaming mug of tea in hand. "You okay?" Rachel asked, concern in her voice. Emily sighed, leaning back into the cushions. "I'm just so tired," she admitted. "But I don't know. It's different this time. I feel like I'm actually doing something." Rachel smiled, her eyes softening. "You are. You're doing the hardest thing you've ever done, and you're doing it on your own. Don't sell yourself short, Em. You've got this." The reassurance, simple as it was, lifted something heavy from Emily's shoulders. It wasn't going to be easy, but Rachel was right. She could do this. She had to. Emily's pregnancy was progressing, and she couldn't help but worry about how she would manage once the baby arrived. The diner job, though a step in the right direction, wasn't going to be enough. But she couldn't think too far ahead. For now, she had to take it day by day. She spent her evenings after work looking for other opportunities, knowing that she needed more to secure a future for herself and her child. Emily's search for a better job had been slow, but every small victory felt like a win. She had applied to a local community center for a job training program, hoping it would lead to something more stable in the future. Still, the fear of the unknown loomed over her, especially as her due date neared. One evening, after a long day at the diner, Emily collapsed onto the couch, exhausted but restless. Her thoughts were consumed with the future. She knew she couldn't rely on Rachel forever, though her friend's support had been invaluable. The reality of being a single mother was starting to feel more tangible, and every day felt like a countdown to the moment she would have to face it all on her own. "Hey, Em, how's the job hunt going?" Rachel asked, sitting beside her with a cup of tea. Her presence was comforting, but Emily couldn't shake the anxiety building inside her. "It's going, slowly," Emily said, rubbing her swollen belly. "I've applied to a few places, but I don't know if I'll find something in time. The baby's coming soon, and I still don't have a steady income. I'm scared." Rachel placed the tea on the coffee table and took Emily's hands in hers. "I get it. It's scary. But you're doing everything you can, and you're stronger than you think. Things will come together." Emily nodded, trying to believe her friend's words. But the fear of not being enough, of not being able to provide for her child, kept her up at night. As the weeks passed, Emily's anxiety only grew. The baby was due soon, and she didn't know how she was going to balance the new responsibilities that were about to come with her uncertain future. Every day she was confronted with the harsh reality that she had very little to fall back on, but she couldn't afford to stop trying. One afternoon, Emily received a call that could change everything. It was from the community center she had applied to, offering her a position in their job training program for medical office assistants. It wasn't much, but it was the opportunity she had been hoping for, a chance to build something long-term. She would be able to learn new skills, gain certifications, and hopefully find a better-paying job in the future. Her heart raced as she hung up the phone. It was the break she needed, the hope she had been searching for. and for the first time in weeks, she felt a tiny spark of optimism. That evening, Emily sat down with Rachel, her eyes shining. "I got in," she said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and excitement. "I'm going to start the training program. It's not much, but it's a start." Rachel's eyes lit up. "That's amazing, Em. I knew you'd get there. I'm so proud of you." Emily smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. It was a small step, but it was the first real step towards securing a better future for herself and her baby. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time in a long while, she believed that things were starting to fall into place. Emily's first day at the community center felt like a fresh start. The small classroom was filled with other women, all in varying stages of their own journeys. Some were single mothers like her, others had left abusive relationships, and a few were simply looking for a new beginning. It was comforting to know she wasn't alone, that there were others out there who understood the challenges she faced. The program was intensive, designed to teach medical office assistants over the course of several months. Emily quickly learned that it would push her to her limits, but there was something exhilarating about the challenge. For the first time in months, she felt like she had a goal, a purpose beyond just surviving day to day. She felt like she was building a future. The days were long, and balancing school with her shifts at the diner was exhausting. But Emily pushed through, determined not to let the fear of failure take root. The baby's due date was getting closer, and every day that passed, she knew she was one step closer to meeting her child. At night, after finishing her studies and helping around the apartment, Emily would lie in bed, hands resting on her stomach, feeling the baby's tiny movements. There was a sense of peace in those quiet moments. No matter how hard things got, she would protect this child with everything she had. She would be the best mother she could be, no matter the circumstances. Rachel continued to be her biggest cheerleader, reminding her that she wasn't alone. And though Emily still had doubts, she couldn't deny that for the first time, she felt like she was moving forward. The weeks passed quickly, and Emily's confidence grew. She was starting to find a rhythm, school, work, and the growing anticipation of the baby's arrival. Her body was getting heavier, her movements slower, but her determination never wavered. She was doing this. She was really doing it. One afternoon, as Emily was leaving her last class before her shift at the diner, she felt a sharp pain in her lower back. At first, she thought it was just the usual discomfort from carrying the baby. But as she made her way to the bus stop, the pain came again, stronger this time, making her stop in her tracks. Her heart raced and her mind went into overdrive. Was it time? Was the baby coming early? She took a deep breath and tried to calm herself. She had a few more weeks to go. It was too soon. But when she got to the diner, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The pain persisted, coming in waves, and by the time her shift was over, she was exhausted and scared. Rachel insisted on taking her to the hospital just to be sure, and though Emily was hesitant, she agreed. The hospital was bustling with activity when they arrived. The nurses were kind but efficient, and before long, Emily was lying on an exam table, hooked up to a monitor. The sound of the baby's heartbeat filled the room, steady and strong. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she felt a mix of relief and overwhelming emotion. "You're doing great, Emily," the nurse said with a smile. "The baby's fine, but it looks like you're experiencing some early contractions. It's nothing to worry about just yet, but you'll need to take it easy." Emily was sent home from the hospital that evening with strict instructions to rest. The doctor assured her that the contractions weren't a sign that the baby was coming immediately, but she needed to take better care of herself. The stress and exhaustion from balancing school, work, and the looming responsibility of motherhood had taken its toll on her body. Rachel, always the supportive friend, insisted on taking the next few days off from work to help Emily. She made sure Emily ate properly and encouraged her to stay off her feet as much as possible. Despite her best efforts to relax, Emily couldn't shake the anxiety that gripped her. She had a million things on her mind. Would she be able to finish the training program before the baby arrived? How would she manage to make ends meet once the baby was here? And most pressing of all, would she be able to do this on her own? She spent hours staring at the walls of Rachel's apartment, her thoughts racing. The quiet moments, the stillness of the apartment, seemed to magnify her fears. She had been so focused on surviving, on making it day by day, that she hadn't allowed herself to think too much about the future. But now, with the baby's arrival drawing closer, the weight of it all felt more overwhelming than ever. Rachel, sensing Emily's inner turmoil, sat beside her one evening and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're doing an amazing job, Em. You've already come so far. You're stronger than you think, and you're going to be a great mom. We'll figure this out together." The warmth of Rachel's words, though simple, settled over Emily like a blanket. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe deeply and believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. The future was still uncertain, but Rachel's support was a steady anchor. And Emily realized that no matter how hard things got, she didn't have to face it all alone. Over the next few days, Emily took Rachel's advice and rested. She focused on getting the sleep she desperately needed and took time to really connect with the baby growing inside her. There were moments of peace when she placed her hand on her stomach and felt the soft, rhythmic movements, reminding her that this was a journey, one that she wasn't walking alone, even if it felt that way sometimes. Rachel, ever the optimist, made sure to keep Emily's spirits up. They talked about everything and nothing, about old memories, about their hopes for the future, and about how Emily's life was going to change in ways she could never have imagined. Rachel kept reminding her that she was capable, that she had already done so much, and that the next chapter of her life would be one she wrote on her own terms. A week later, Emily returned to the community center to continue her classes, though she was still nervous about pushing herself too hard. Her instructors and classmates were understanding, and the support she received was humbling. They could see the strength in her, even when she didn't feel strong. Each lesson she learned, each day she moved forward, helped ease some of the uncertainty. Emily didn't know exactly what the future would hold, but for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope, a sense of possibility. She was determined to make it work, no matter the obstacles. The weeks seemed to blend together in a haze of exhaustion and hope. Emily had settled into a new routine, balancing her shifts at the diner with her training at the community center. Her belly was growing, her due date creeping closer each day. But despite all the progress, she couldn't shake the gnawing fear that something was going to go wrong. She had a job now, and though it wasn't much, it felt like a step in the right direction. The training program was challenging, but she was learning new things every day, skills that would help her build a career and a stable future for herself and her baby. But there were days, more than she cared to admit, when doubt crept in and made her question everything. Would she really be able to make it? Could she juggle being a new mom and building a career at the same time? What if the baby arrived before she was ready? The thought of not being able to provide the kind of life she had always dreamed of for her child made her chest tighten with anxiety. The fear of failing as a mother was overwhelming. One evening, after a long shift, Emily returned to Rachel's apartment, exhausted and defeated. Rachel was sitting on the couch, sipping her tea, but she could tell something was wrong as soon as Emily walked through the door. "Hey," Rachel said softly, setting the cup down. "You okay?" Emily sank onto the couch beside her, rubbing her eyes. "I don't know. I just feel like I'm never going to be ready for this. The baby's almost here, and I still feel so unprepared." Rachel studied Emily for a moment before nodding understandingly. "I get it. It's terrifying, isn't it? The unknown, the responsibility. But you're doing the best you can, and that's enough. You've come so far already. You've got more strength than you give yourself credit for." Emily shook her head, a tear escaping as she wiped it away. I don't want to fail. I don't want to mess this up. I want to give this baby everything. But I feel so lost sometimes. What if I can't do it?" Rachel took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You're not alone in this, Em. I know you're scared, but you've already made it through so much, and I believe you can do this. You have to believe that too." Emily looked at her heart swelling with gratitude for Rachel's unwavering support. But despite the comfort in Rachel's words, Emily couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she wasn't enough. She wasn't sure she ever would be. The next few days were a blur. Emily went to class, worked long shifts, and tried to rest when she could. But the closer the baby's arrival got, the more her doubts crept in. She was beginning to wonder if there would ever be a time when she felt truly ready for the life ahead. Then one evening, as Emily sat on the edge of her bed cradling her belly, a sudden movement startled her. It was a strong kick, so firm that it almost took her breath away. She smiled softly, placing her hand over her stomach, feeling the baby shift beneath her palm. "This is real," she whispered to herself. "This is really happening." It was a moment of clarity, small but powerful. No matter what happened, she wasn't going to back down. She was ready. Maybe not in the way she had imagined, but she was ready. Emily was sitting in the living room one afternoon, quietly organizing the baby's clothes she had managed to collect, when the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, and a sudden sense of unease washed over her. She had learned to become cautious, especially when it came to people from her past, and the thought of dealing with any more disappointment made her anxious. She walked to the door slowly, peeking through the peephole. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw the person standing on the other side. It was Daniel. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen him in years, since he was a baby really, the son of the man who had thrown her out and left her behind. He looked so different now, taller, older, more confident. Yet his eyes still carried the same intensity, the same unspoken questions that had haunted her all those years ago. Emily's hand trembled as she reached for the door handle. She wasn't sure what to expect from this encounter, but she knew she couldn't avoid it forever. She opened the door slowly, her heart racing. "Daniel," she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel looked at her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Hi, Emily," he said softly, his voice carrying a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. "Can we talk?" Emily's mind raced, her heart pounding in her chest. What could he possibly want? Why was he here now, after all these years? Emily stood there, frozen for a moment, as the shock of his presence took hold. She had never expected this moment, never imagined it would come. But now that Daniel was standing in front of her, she couldn't shake the whirlwind of emotions crashing through her. "Can we talk?" Daniel asked again, his tone softer, but still firm. There was something in his eyes, something that told her he needed answers, something she wasn't sure she was ready to give. She stepped aside, hesitantly allowing him into the apartment. Her mind was a swirl of conflicting thoughts, but she knew there was no turning back now. As he stepped inside, the tension in the room thickened, and Emily tried to steady herself. She had never anticipated facing James's past through his son, but now, here it was. "Why are you here, Daniel?" she asked, her voice shaking despite her efforts to stay calm. She wanted to understand, to know what brought him here, after all these years. Daniel glanced around the room, his gaze briefly flickering over the modest apartment before returning to her. "I've been looking for you," he admitted, his voice quiet but steady. "I don't know if you remember me, but I'm James's son, Daniel." The mention of James's name sent a sharp pang through Emily's chest, but she forced herself to focus. He wasn't James. He was his own person. He deserved answers, whether or not she was ready to give them. "I've heard things. I've been trying to understand," Daniel continued. "My mother, she told me about you, about how you left, about how everything went down. But I need to know, why did he leave? Why didn't he try to fix things with you? Why didn't he want to be a father?" Emily's heart raced, a mix of old pain and new confusion rushing through her. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself before speaking. Emily stood there, feeling the weight of Daniel's words sink in. The pain of the past, all the years of silence, and the unanswered questions she had buried so deeply within her, all came rushing back in that moment. She had never expected to confront her past in this way, through James's son, no less. For a moment, she felt the familiar ache in her chest, the feeling of abandonment, the feeling of being tossed aside. But she quickly pushed it away, focusing on Daniel, who was standing in front of her, waiting for an answer. He wasn't to blame for what had happened. He was just trying to make sense of a past that had been left incomplete, just like she had. "I don't have all the answers, Daniel," Emily said, her voice trembling. "But I'll try to explain. James, he was never ready to be a father. He was consumed with his career, his empire. He didn't want anything to change, especially not a baby." Daniel's eyes searched her face, as if looking for something more, something deeper than what she was saying. But why? Why didn't he try? Why didn't he care? Emily swallowed hard, struggling to find the words. Because he was scared. Scared of losing control. Scared of what a child would do to his life, to his success. I don't know all the reasons, Daniel, but I know he didn't want to face it. He thought leaving me would protect his world. But in the end, it cost him everything. His family, his chance to be a father. Daniel looked away, his jaw tight with emotion. That's not fair, he muttered under his breath. Emily's heart broke for him. She had wanted him to have a different kind of father, someone who would love him and cherish him. She never wanted this for him, but she couldn't change the past. Daniel stood silently, absorbing her words. The pain on his face was evident, and Emily could see the struggle in his eyes. He was trying to reconcile the image of his father that had been built up over the years with the harsh reality she was sharing. The truth was ugly, but it was the only one she had. I don't know what to say, Daniel finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I've spent so many years trying to figure this out, trying to understand why he left, why he couldn't be there for me. And now, it's like I'm hearing the answer for the first time, but it still doesn't make sense. Emily stepped closer, her voice softening. It's not easy to hear, I know. I had to come to terms with it myself. But James, he never dealt with his fears. He pushed everyone away to protect his own comfort, and in the process, he lost everything that mattered. Daniel's expression hardened, but there was a glimmer of something in his eyes, a realization maybe, or the beginning of acceptance. I always thought I needed his approval, his love. I thought if I could just understand why he left, I'd be able to fix something, make it right. But maybe I've been chasing something that doesn't even exist. Emily reached out, her hand resting gently on his arm. I'm sorry, Daniel. You didn't deserve any of this. A long silence passed between them, both of them lost in their thoughts. Finally, Daniel looked up at her, his eyes clearer, though still shadowed by the weight of what they had just uncovered. I don't know what happens next, Daniel said slowly, but I think I'm finally ready to let go of the past. Emily nodded, a bittersweet smile tugging at her lips. You don't have to carry it anymore, Daniel. You don't have to carry him. The days following Daniel's visit were filled with quiet reflection for Emily. She hadn't expected the conversation to leave such an impact, not only on Daniel but on herself. She had shared so much of her pain, her fears, her regrets. But in doing so, she had also come to terms with her own journey, her own growth. She sat in Rachel's living room, her hands gently cradling her swollen belly, as the soft hum of the city outside seemed to echo her thoughts. The baby was due any day now, and Emily found herself torn between the excitement of the new life she was about to bring into the world and the uncertainty that still loomed over her future. Rachel had been her rock through it all, but as the baby's arrival grew nearer, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that her world was about to change forever, both for the better and for the more complicated. The reality of being a single mother, of taking on the responsibility of raising a child alone, had started to feel less daunting. She had made it this far, and she would make it through whatever came next. Her phone buzzed on the table, and Emily glanced down, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the message. It was from Daniel. I've been thinking a lot about everything we talked about. I know it's not going to be easy, but I think I need to find my own way too. I just wanted to thank you for being honest with me. I'll always remember that. Take care of yourself. Take care of the baby. Daniel. Emily smiled softly as she read the message, feeling a sense of relief that Daniel was beginning to find peace, even if it meant moving on from the past. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they both had their own paths to follow now. Emily exhaled slowly, setting the phone down as warmth spread through her chest. Daniel had found closure in his own way, and so had she. The past no longer held her captive. She had faced it, spoken her truth, and now she could finally move forward. That night, as she lay in bed, a sudden sharp pain shot through her lower back. She gasped, gripping the sheets as another wave of pain followed. Her breath came in short, shallow bursts. This wasn't like before. This was real. Rachel rushed into the room at the sound of Emily's pained breathing. One look at her, and Rachel knew. "It's time," she said, grabbing the hospital bag they had packed days ago. The ride to the hospital was a blur. Emily clenched Rachel's hand through every contraction, waves of pain rolling through her. But beneath the pain was something else, an unshakable determination. She had come too far to let fear take over now. Hours passed in a haze of effort and exhaustion. But then, at last, a new sound filled the room. The sharp, beautiful cry of her newborn baby. Tears blurred Emily's vision as the nurse gently placed the tiny bundle into her arms. A boy, her son. Her chest tightened with overwhelming emotion as she looked down at him. "Hi, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm your mom." The baby quieted at the sound of her voice, his tiny fingers curling around hers. In that moment, everything else, James, the pain of the past, the uncertainty, faded away. She wasn't alone. She never had been. She had her son, and together they would build a future, a new beginning.